Chapter 131. Do not reveal your wealth, reverse robbery. The leader took out a spirit stone and smiled coldly. You can only blame yourself for daring to disrupt the business of our Zhong clan. You are actually willing to exchange an inferior grade spirit stone for a broken bell. Do you not understand the concept of not revealing your wealth? Xiao Chen trembled in his heart. So these people are from the Zhong clan. It's no wonder they dare to be so presumptuous. He could not help but have a bad feeling. Xiao Chen asked them coldly, where is the cultivator with a missing arm from last night? Haha. That cripple. We killed him. Leaving that sort of trash alive is just increasing the burden. I was very courteous to him by offering 1,000 silver taels. He still did not want to sell to me. I have already killed him. There's nothing else that can be done, the leader said in an indifferent manner. Xiao Chen felt extremely angry. What that person's life amounted to in their eyes. Was he not even comparable to a beast? No more crap. Kill. The leader was already very impatient. He opened his mouth to order his men to kill Xiao Chen. However, before he could finish speaking, he suddenly saw a flash of purple light. His body had already been sliced in half. The lunar shadow saber was stained with blood. Xiao Chen took out an old piece of cloth and wiped it clean. After a moment, he fired out a few streams of purple flame and burnt the bodies on the ground. Xiao Chen only used a short period to deal with 5 inferior grade martial grand masters. With Xiao Chen's current cultivation as peak martial master, as well as his achievements in the rushing thunder saber technique and azure dragon cloud soaring art, he was matchless within the martial grand master realm. In fact, unless they were peak martial grand masters, or had inherited martial spirits or other secret treasures, they would not last more than 10 moves with Xiao Chen. After he fully exhibited the rushing thunder saber technique, it was like thunder and wind bellowing, like lightning striking. Each move was stronger than the one before, being able to kill enemies above his cultivation realm. If he were met with weak-willed enemies, killing them would be as easy as cutting a watermelon. After using some essence, Xiao Chen's original looks were revealed. This was the result of the shape-shifting spell not being cultivated to a sufficient level. As long as he used essence, he would immediately recover his original appearance. I have reached such a state today because of Zhong Muong's initial mockings, bullying the weak with his strength. If it were not for the Zhong clan, I would not be running around the streets like a mouse, being chased after by the noble clans. If it were not for the Zhong clan, the cultivator with the missing arm would not have been killed. He would not have been easily dismissed by indifferent words such as, I already killed him, there's nothing else that can be done. Xiao Chen's eyes were bloodshot. According to Jin Dabao's news, the Zhong clan head and their martial saint experts were currently in Savage Forest looking for him. This means there were no martial saints left at the Zhong residence. There would be no one who could pose a threat to Xiao Chen. There were too many unfair things in this world. Xiao Chen could not be bothered by, nor was he willing to deal with them. However, this Zhong clan was too abominable. They kept pestering him over and over again. In that case, I might as well wipe them out completely, Xiao Chen thought to himself. He put on a black cloak and slowly made his way to the Zhong residence. The Zhong residence was on a large street to the west of the city. It occupied land consisting of thousands of meter squares. There was a great show of extravagance at the front gates. Just the steps leading to it climbed at least 10 meters. 10 martial masters stood on each side. There were also 2 huge stone lions on each side, which looked awe-inspiring. Who is sneaking around there? Don't you know this is the Zhong clan? Scram quickly before I break your legs. The cultivators standing in front of the Zhong Residence's gates shouted when they saw Xiao Chen, dressed in a black cloak. Xiao Chen lowered his hood and revealed a handsome face. He looked extremely sharp as he released his killing intent at full force. He smiled faintly, do I not even have the right to stand here? It's Xiao Chen. Quick, kill him. The clan head said whoever killed him would be given an elder's position. Everyone recognized Xiao Chen's appearance. 20 martial master drew their weapon and rushed forward with surging killing intents. A boundless and limitless flame appeared in Xiao Chen's right eye before transforming into a purple light. Boom. The 20 martial masters instantly and spontaneously combusted. They cried out miserably. Before they managed to reach Xiao Chen, they turned into piles of ash. A cultivator who opened the doors of the Zhong Residence happened to see the scene. He immediately cried out and shut the doors once again. Xiao Chen exhausted half his essence. He took out an essence returning pill and swallowed it. The 20 martial masters did not pose any danger to him. However, he did not wish to drag it out. This fight had to end quickly. He had to finish before the noble clans arrived. Bang! Xiao Chen kicked the doors open. He only managed to take 2 steps in before an old man holding a saber, gleaming with a cold light, led a large group of cultivators forward. The leader was the late Zhong clan's first elder's brother, Zhong Yuheng. He watched as Xiao Chen slowly walked in. He did not reveal a startled or joyful expression. He only revealed an expression of hatred and said, "You choose not to take the path of heaven, yet despite there being no door, you insisted on going to hell. I will skin you alive today to take revenge for my big brother." TL note. You choose not to take the path of heaven, yet despite there being no door, you insisted on going to hell. This means to choose to take the difficult way and suffer even though there is an easier way. Fu Si. He was answered with an essence light arrow. The arrow buzzed through the air, flying gracefully. It flew at the speed of lightning towards Zhong Yuheng's chest. Zhong Yuheng was startled. An essence light arrow killed his brother before he was pinned on the city wall in humiliation. He was very clear on the speed of the essence light arrow, as well as the might of the Soul Slayer bow. Without having enough time to dodge, he covered the saber in his hand with essence and held it in front of his chest. Boom! The speed of the fully powered Soul Slayer bow combined with the essence light arrow was too fast. Even if he accurately predicted where the arrow would land, he would not be capable of blocking it. By the time he brought the saber up, the essence light arrow had pierced his chest. The huge force caused his body to fly back and pinned him to a tall wall. Blood flowed unceasingly from his mouth. His bulging eyes caused anyone who saw it to be afraid. The surroundings became quiet. Everyone saw the blustering Zhong Yuheng, pinned to the wall after he spoke. They all took in a breath of cold air, their faces were filled with incredulous looks. Xiao Chen swept through the crowd with his eyes and put away the Soul Slayer bow. He did not give them any time to be astonished. He dashed towards the area where the most martial Grand Masters were. The Azure Dragon Cloud soaring art was executed to its extreme. Xiao Chen sped along and arrived in the middle of the group instantly. There was a roar of thunder. He executed drawing the saber. The saber flashed, and a martial Grand Master was sliced in 2. The Zhong clan cultivators quickly reacted and surrounded Xiao Chen. 3 cultivators behind Xiao Chen leapt into the air, chopping ruthlessly at his back. If Xiao Chen turned around to block it, then the momentum of the rushing thunder saber technique would be stopped. Thus, Xiao Chen ignored them. Arclight chop. A 2-meter-long purple light flashed by in the air. 1 out of the 3 martial Grand Masters, who did not manage to dodge in time, was cut in half by the arclight. The electrical light in the arclight leapt around and created a shockwave, blasting back the cultivators who tried to surround him. Bang! 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 There were 3 depressed rings. The 3 sabers had chopped Xiao Chen's back. The chi infused in the sabers blew Xiao Chen's clothes to bits at the back. The 3 men revealed an expression of joy. They shouted, "Put in more effort and kill this brat." The sabers struck the battle armor inside Xiao Chen's clothes. Although the battle armor blocked the saber blades, it was not able to block the energy infused in the sabers. Even though Xiao Chen's physical body was very strong, his internal organs still churned. Blood trickled out from the corner of Xiao Chen's mouth. Rushing heaven chop. Xiao Chen did not care about the attack from behind. He pushed his feet off the ground and rose gracefully into the air. He instantly pierced through the chest of 6 martial Grand Masters in front. Blood immediately spewed into the air and landed on Xiao Chen. It caused him to look like a demon. The instant he left the ground, there was a roar of thunder, and the 3 martial Grand Masters who attacked him from behind became meat paste. Hu Kai. Suddenly Xiao Chen spun around in midair and paused there. Blood dyed his black clothes red. His aura was raised to its peak. Everyone below trembled. Rushing thunder chop. A boundless thunder roared behind him like a huge wave surging to the sky. Each wave was stronger than the last. This caused his aura that was raised to its peak to be raised even further to an untouchable level. Bang! A martial Grand Master below tried to use his saber to block, but his spirit weapon immediately broke into two pieces. The lunar shadow saber moved from the top to the bottom. With a loud sound, this Zhong clan martial Grand Master was sliced in two halves, each side blasting off in a different direction. Rushing thunder second chain chop. A boundless thunder roared, and Xiao Chen suddenly came to a halt. The place became incredible quiet. The lunar shadow saber suddenly shone with a resplendent electrical light, becoming a long beam of electricity. Hu Kai. Xiao Chen's surroundings turned into a maelstrom. Within the maelstrom, there were countless arcs of electricity leaping around. A few Zhong clan cultivators rushed over, trying to break this terrifying maelstrom. A resplendent electrical light rushed into the sky, and a boundless shockwave spread throughout the surroundings. The few cultivators who rushed over were immediately knocked flying. Boom! Xiao Chen shouted. The lunar shadow saber slammed on the ground with a boundless electrical glow. Dust instantly flew up into the air, and the stones on the ground were sent soaring into the air. There were many miserable cries. A significant number of people were turned to ash as they were struck by the electrical glow. There were some who were struck by the flying stones. They vomited blood as they were blasted backward. Xiao Chen withdrew his saber and stood upright. He looked coldly at the cultivators who kept pouring in from all directions. He waved his hand, and a golden sculpture appeared from thin air. Boom! A huge golden lion king appeared in the Zhong Residence. It immediately stomped on the ground and crushed a few cultivators who did not dodge in time. The power was too great, it created a huge pit in the ground. Xiao Chen controlled the golden lion king to spit out a golden flame. The Zhong Residence instantly lit up with roaring flames. When the golden lion king was in the ancient remnant, even the martial saints of the noble clans could not do anything against it. How could these martial grand masters of the Zhong clan deal with it? Xiao Chen did not originally want to use the golden lion king. However, there were too many suicidal cultivators in the Zhong clan. All of them wanted to take his head and exchange it for endless wealth and power. After the huge golden lion king appeared, there were none who could block it. All the cultivators screamed as they tried to flee. However, they were all unable to do so. All of them were either trampled into mush or burned to ash. The Zhong clan head and the martial saints were not here. Furthermore, the leader, Zhong Yuheng, was instantly killed. Now that the undefeatable golden lion king appeared, their morale instantly crumbled. Amidst the chaos, Xiao Chen extended his spiritual sense and ignored all the fleeing cultivators. He was searching for the Zhong clan's hidden treasury. There were sounds of fighting coming from a pavilion to the west of the Zhong residence. Occasionally, there would be someone running out with a large pile of treasures, fleeing from the Zhong residence. In the times of difficulty, the Zhong clan cultivators became chaotic. It was obvious this was where the Zhong clan's hidden treasury was. Xiao Chen laughed lightly as he stood on the golden lion king's back and rushed over. A cool breeze blew, his blood-stained hair fluttered in the wind. He crushed countless pavilions and walls on their way there, leaving behind a trail of rubble. The Zhong clan cultivators in the secret treasury were clearly startled when they saw Xiao Chen. Before Xiao Chen got near, they fled. Xiao Chen jumped down and gave a command to the golden lion king to go berserk, then he ignored it. After this usage of the golden lion king, the sculpture would immediately shatter. There was no possible way to save it. He walked into the treasury and swallowed another chi-returning pill. Xiao Chen extended out his spiritual sense, and everything within the range of it appeared in his mind. There was a secret room underneath the treasury that attracted Xiao Chen's attention. Relying on his spiritual sense, Xiao Chen navigated past many secret passages and traps. He quickly arrived at the secret room underneath. A huge rock blocked the entrance. It was clear there was some hidden mechanism to open it. The rock was about 66 centimeters thick. Xiao Chen could not be bothered to find the hidden mechanism. He condensed a strand of purple flame on his finger. The purple flame revolved around continuously. Every cycle it revolved, the essence in Xiao Chen's body would be rapidly exhausted. Shoot! Xiao Chen shouted lightly, and the spinning purple thunder true fire shot out. It left behind a blazing tail as it flew through the air. It smashed into the rock violently, and there was a loud boom. A large hole immediately appeared on the huge rock. Cracks continued to extend out from the hole. The purple thunder true fire had been tempered by Xiao Chen several times. Its penetrative power was a far cry from its previous state. Seeing the hole in the rock, Xiao Chen raised his leg and kicked the rock, shattering it into countless pieces. Xiao Chen entered the secret room in a flash. The ground was lined with rows of wooden boxes. He casually opened one of the boxes, and a golden light flashed. Gold, silver, pearls, and jade filled the box. Xiao Chen smiled faintly and swept everything into his universe ring. There was a total of 20 boxes filled with treasures. He left nothing behind. He then turned his attention to the shelves on the two sides. The things on the shelves were very organized. One shelf was for medicinal pills, one for spirit weapon, one for martial techniques, one for battle armor. Finally, on the last shelf, Xiao Chen even saw inferior grade spirit stones. There were at least 200 of them. Above the spirit stones, there were at least 100 essence light arrows. Joy filled Xiao Chen's face. He could not be bothered to count everything. He simply swept everything into his universe ring in a messy fashion. Even so, Xiao Chen still spent more than 10 minutes emptying the secret room. Hu Kai. Before Xiao Chen left, he burnt down everything before beating a hasty retreat. The Golden Lion King was smashing into everything in the Zhong Residence. Flames were flying everywhere. The berserk Golden Lion King was like a huge broken machine. It enveloped the entire Zhong Residence in chaos and a raging flame. Xiao Chen looked into the distance. There were 4 ships flying over rapidly. The various noble clans received the news and were currently rushing over. Xiao Chen smiled faintly, and a silver warship flew out of his right eye. He gently leapt onto the bow, and it turned into a silver flash of light, leaving rapidly. Not long after Xiao Chen left, a black warship stopped in front of the Zhong Residence. When the Zhong clan head, Zhong Mingxun, saw the flames burning high, and the trashed Zhong Residence, his face turned mournful. An expression of disbelief appeared in his eyes. Zhong Mingxun was pale as he said, "I have let down the ancestors. The foundation that had been built for hundreds of years is gone, just like that. Clan head, let's quickly check the secret treasury. As long as the wealth the Zhong clan has accumulated for hundreds of years is still around, we will have the opportunity to rise again," a consecrate elder said from behind him. Zhong Mingxun reacted and said loudly, Right. There is still the secret treasury. The Zhong clan's accumulations of hundreds of years are there. There are several thousand gold taels and countless medicinal pills, spirit weapons, and battle armor. We will definitely rise again." He seemed to have found one last hope. He led the people behind him and rushed to the secret treasury. Ji Chengkong watched the small silver boat in the distance expressionlessly from the black warship. He said resolutely, "Chase after him. Don't bother conserving spirit stones." The black warship disappeared like a ghost. In front of it, the ice bird below the Duanmu clan's profound ice palace gave out a loud cry and chased after Xiao Chen at a rapid speed. A large group of cultivators was gathered in front of the Zhong Residence. They watched the Zhong Residence burn up in flames, and all had the same thought. The Zhong clan is finished. It was completely destroyed by a superior grade martial master. The huge Zhong clan was actually destroyed by a single superior grade martial master. How unbelievable. Indeed. This Xiao Chen is very decisive. He took advantage of the moment when all the martial saints had left and killed his way in. His boldness really leaves me speechless. Do you think the Zhang clan will still be able to rise from the ashes? There is no possibility. Over the years, the Zhong clan has offended many people. They have already lost a significant number of martial grand masters in the ancient remnant. Now that their foundation has been destroyed, it could be said they have been completely destroyed. That's good. When that bastard son of his was still alive, he caused so much trouble for this old man. The crowds were all discussing how the Zhong clan, who had been so mighty in Whitewater City for hundreds of years, had been destroyed in one day. Some felt it was unfortunate, but most of them were rejoicing in their hearts, their faces filled with glee over the misfortune. Gone. All gone. Zhong Mingxun said non-stop in a frantic state. He had only seen an empty space filled with ash. There was no secret room any longer. Xiao Chen was riding his silver warship high in the sky, moving rapidly through the clouds. His speed was as fast as lightning. The clouds went by in a flash. Xiao Chen stood at the bow. His hair was fluttering in the fierce wind. Xiao Chen turned his head back to look at the profound ice palace chasing after him. He smiled faintly and withdrew the silver warship back into his eye. Then, he fell from the sky. Xiao Chen transformed into a meteor and landed on the ground with an explosion after a moment. He had completely vanished from the sight or perception of the profound ice palace. Half a month later, the bounty set on Xiao Chen by the various noble clans was doubled. When the news came out, there was an uproar everywhere. Instantly, everyone within the Great Qin nation knew the name, Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen became the topic of discussion at dinner tables. Everyone talked about Xiao Chen's identity. There were multiple versions of the story on how he formed a grudge with the noble clans. In Liusheng Pavilion, Jin Dabao cursed, "What a beast. Even this fat lord only dared to slice a few pieces of meat of them occasionally. This fellow completely cleaned out the Zhang clan." A manservant ran over, holding a contract. He smiled at Jin Dabao and said, "Young master, the territories of the Zhong clan have all been transferred. The city lord has already stamped his seal on it." What surprised the manservant was the fatty did not have a smug smile on his face. He slowly took the contract and said, "This is meaningless. There is no challenge at all. This is a defeat that goes beyond an ordinary level." The manservant did not understand and asked, "How is that?" "Young master, you have used nothing to purchase all these inns and workshops." The fatty cursed out, "What the hell do you know? That fellow took all the good stuff. All the silver and gold. Just thinking about it breaks my heart. If this fat lord had known, I would have made a move myself." In the mountain range of Misty Sword Sect, Chu Chaoyun stood on one of the peaks. When he heard this news, he gave a faint smile. A gentle wind blew, and his clothes fluttered, making him look very graceful and elegant. A delicate and pretty girl with a sword behind her back leapt up from below the mountain. She was very nimble, looking like a dancing butterfly. Soon, she arrived before Chu Chaoyun. "Senior brother, the sect master has called you to the Great Hall." Chu Chaoyun looked at this girl and revealed a warm smile. He nodded his head slightly and followed her down. Another half a month passed, and a big piece of news was sent out. Xiao Chen had deposited 20 million gold taels in Flying Snow Manor. If anyone killed a noble clan disciple, they could go to Flying Snow Manor to claim 1,000 gold taels. The higher was the rank of the person killed, the greater was the reward. If they killed a successor or a person of similar status, they could receive 5 million gold taels and a medial grade spirit stone. This news was accompanied by Xiao Chen's proclamation to the noble clans, 3 years from now, I will personally kill my way to these noble clans who set bounties on me. This is a promise I will definitely keep. The Flying Snow Manor was an assassin association scattered throughout the entire continent. Aside from their own assassins, cultivators may go to the manor to set or receive missions. Since the founding of the Great Qin nation, the Flying Snow Manor had never received such a large mission. Not only were there 20 million gold taels, but there were also the rare medial grade spirit stones. It was hard for one not to be moved. When the news spread, the whole nation was impassioned. No one expected someone to dare challenge multiple noble clans at the same time. These noble clans had existed since the time of the Tianwu dynasty. They had innate bloodlines or inherited martial spirits. Some of these clans had even existed for tens of thousands of years. Their strengths were extremely horrifying, yet an insignificant superior grade martial master dared challenge them. This caused people to feel the world has changed. Dongming Province, Dongming City, this was the heart of the entire Dongming Province. It is also the most bustling city in the Great Qin nation. The streets were boiling cauldrons of voices, the sound of people peddling their wares fell incessantly on the ear. Xiao Chen transformed into an ordinary-looking youth, slowly walking around the big street. Using this 1 month of time, aside from going to Flying Snow Manor, he practiced the shapeshifting spell. After practicing for an entire month, he finally got to the point where he would not change back to his original look when using essence. The fastest way to get to the Heavenly Saber Pavilion in the Zaihe province from the Dongming province was to travel through the sky. Furthermore, the only relay station for flights to Zaihe province in Dongming province was in Dongming city. Xiao Chen could use his silver warship to fly. Its speed would not be slower than the flying spirit beasts of the relay stations. However, there was one very awkward problem. Xiao Chen did not know the way, there were no signboards in the sky. If Xiao Chen just flew by following a map, he might end up never leaving Dongming province. The sky was too different from the land, it was impossible to navigate the sky using a map designed for ground usage. Dongming province's flight relay station was a huge plaza. There were all sorts of huge flying spirit beasts resting in the plaza. Xiao Chen went straight to the ticketing counter and spent 1,000 gold taels to purchase the most expensive ticket. Such a ticket would allow him to ride a spirit beast alone, he would not have to squeeze with other people. It was not only comfortable but also significantly faster. Xiao Chen held his ticket and walked directly to a stone platform in the plaza. There were 3 huge golden eagles resting on the stone platform. The golden eagle was a rank 5 flying spirit beast. Amongst the rank 5 spirit beasts, it was the one with the fastest speed. It was the limit of what humans were able to tame. Rumors were the great Tang nation's beast taming abode was able to tame rank 7 flying spirit beasts. However, no one knew how much of this rumor was true. Xiao Chen handed over his ticket and headed up the stone platform. There was a tamer sitting on one of the golden eagles. Xiao Chen did not think too much of it and walked over immediately. The tamer was wearing a set of long gray robes with a hood covering his head, resulting in one not being able to see his figure or facial appearance. After Xiao Chen took a seat, the golden eagle cried out loudly and spread its wings. There was a strong gust of wind, and it rose from the ground. Soon, the golden eagle reached an altitude of 1,000 meters. Suddenly, the tamer removed the hood and turned around to look at Xiao Chen. That person smiled faintly and said, "Brother Xiao, it's been a long time." When Xiao Chen saw who it was, he was extremely startled, he almost fell off the golden eagle. There was no way he would have expected to meet this person here. He also could not imagine this person would be able to recognize him. "Feng Feishui. Why are you here? How did you recognize me?" Xiao Chen exclaimed out with incomparable shock. He had not expected to such a scenario to happen. Feng Feishui tossed away the hood in her hand. She smiled faintly, and her elegant face seemed to blossom like a flower. She said, "I came to send you off. No matter what appearance you change into, I will be able to recognize you." After Xiao Chen's shock wore off, he slowly recovered his calm. He revealed a relaxed smile and could not help but feel joy in his heart. He asked, "Did cousin Yulan and the others go to Heavenly Qin School?" Feng Feishui changed her posture. She was now completely facing Xiao Chen and slightly nearer. She revealed a mischievous smile and said, "They arrived already. Everything should be going smoothly for them. She asked me to tell you to take care. She will come look for you in 4 years." When Xiao Chen heard this, he was stunned. Cousin Yunlin will find me in 4 years. He could not help but ask himself in his heart, was I being too heartless by leaving like that? Although Xiao Chen was quite slow when it came to matters involving romantic relationships, he could clearly feel cousin Yulin's feelings for him surpassed that of a regular romantic relationship. However, in his heart, he had never considered the Xiao clan as his final destination. Since he had already made up his mind long ago to leave the Xiao clan, he did not want to leave behind any concerns or connections. Thinking of this, Xiao Chen could not help but smile bitterly. Back then, when he left, he seemed very confident and at ease. However, how could he easily forget the people he met and the things that happened? Humans were not plants, no one could be completely emotionless. Was there really anyone who did not understand emotions? Was there really anyone who truly enjoyed being alone, to be enemies of the world, killing everything in his path? Feng Feishui held out her lily-white hands. There was a recommendation letter in them. She said, "The once-a-year exam for the Heavenly Saber Pavilion should be over already. If you wish to become an inner disciple, you will have to start from being an outer disciple and climb the ranks step by step. It is a very time-consuming process. This recommendation letter should be able to help you." Xiao Chen did not take it. Instead, he looked straight into Feng Feishui's eyes, as though he was able to see through her thoughts. After a while, he muttered, "Feng Feishui, I believe it is time you gave me an explanation. How are you related to my Xiao clan? Why do you care so much for me?" The first time Xiao Chen met Feng Feishui in Regretful Iron, she sold him the Azure Dragon Medicine Cauldron at a very low price. The few times they met after that, Feng Feishui had always expressed goodwill. Xiao Chen did not believe there was someone who would be nice to one for no reason at all unless that person was a relative. Even amongst relatives, only one's parents would be unconditionally nice to their children. When Feng Feishui heard this, she was stunned. Then she smiled and said, "Is this important? If you really want to know, you can always go to the imperial capital, you will find your answer there." Xiao Chen felt suspicious. Why must I go to the imperial capital? Can you not tell me now? Feng Feishui smiled tactfully. It is said oral expressions cannot be taken as proof. Since there is no proof, if I casually made up a reason, you would not be able to find the flaw in it. There are some things I am not able to explain to you if you don't go to the imperial capital. It will be more appropriate for the person involved to explain it to you themselves. Xiao Chen frowned and carefully considered what Feng Feishui meant by what she said. They were all linked in countless ways, like a spider's web. There was no way for him to obtain any clues. Xiao Chen was unable to make sense of Feng Feishui's words. Why must I go to the imperial capital? Is there someone I must meet there? Feng Feishui shoved the recommendation letter in her hands onto Xiao Chen's. She said, "Regardless of what you think, consider it as if I'm paying back gratitude or paying a debt. The Feng clan will never force you into anything. Even if there is no place for you in this world, the doors of the Feng clan will always be open to you. This is as far as I will send you. Although I really want to come with you, I really can't go to Zaihe province. Goodbye. There is no need to worry, the Golden Eagle will automatically bring you there." Feng Feishui smiled and left behind a melodious laughter. She jumped off the Golden Eagle, and fiery red lotus flowers appeared below her feet, carrying her as she glided into the distance. Xiao Chen looked at the recommendation letter in his hand, then he looked at the distant Feng Feishui. He shook his head and smiled bitterly. She is still a mystery. However, it is good to hear news of cousin Yulan. As the Golden Eagle continued to fly, Xiao Chen felt bored. He took out the small, exquisite copper bell he purchased previously. He had been busy practicing the shape-shifting spell and had forgotten about it. Holding the bell in his hand, Xiao Chen knocked on it gently. The copper bell gave off a melodious ring. It made one comfortable when they heard it, but there was nothing strange about it. Xiao Chen was sure this was a secret treasure. Unfortunately, the formations and dhows contained in it were all damaged. The space within the secret treasure was completely chaotic. Xiao Chen's spiritual sense had no way of entering. The last time he only casually inspected it, he was injured, resulting in Xiao Chen not daring to try again. Since there was no way for his spiritual sense to enter, he could not ascertain the extent of the damages to the formation. Thus, he did not know how to repair it. This copper bell should be a very powerful secret treasure. It was unfortunate he ran into such a situation. Suddenly, there was a fierce gust of cold wind. The cold wind instantly transformed into a horrifying hurricane. One could indistinctly see the figure of a white dragon within it. The sounds coming from it was like countless people screaming out. "Who see?" Xiao Chen, who was thinking about the copper bell, did not notice it. By the time he reacted, the fierce wind had already curled around him and pulled him away from the Golden Eagle. "What's going on?" Xiao Chen was astonished. This wind was very strong. Xiao Chen was unable to circulate his essence while he was in the wind. He struggled to no avail in the air, wobbling left and right. Sometimes his body would be thrown high in the air, at other times, it would be flung downwards at high speed. It was like he was riding a roller coaster, changing direction suddenly without any means to resist. The piercing cold wind cut his body like knives. It was incredibly painful. Xiao Chen cried out loudly, but under the force of nature, there was no way to resist. Amidst the cold wind, Xiao Chen's constantly moving body saw a pair of cold eyes. A boundless resentment filled the eyes. It became a cold wind and drilled into his mind. When the Golden Eagle saw what was going on, it cried out and circled. He headed for the gust of wind, wanting to catch Xiao Chen. However, the Golden Eagle was not very familiar with Xiao Chen yet. The Golden Eagle's huge body broke through the wind and crashed into Xiao Chen with great force. The dizzy Xiao Chen's situation was made worse by this collision. He was knocked out of the wind and fell, like a kite with a broken string, as he was unable to circulate his essence. Damn it. I actually ran into a white dragon storm. Will I end up dying from the fall? Xiao Chen panicked and wanted to release the silver warship using his spiritual sense. However, the strange cold wind had penetrated Xiao Chen's mind. When Xiao Chen tried to use his spiritual sense, he could feel pain in his mind. It was like a needle jabbing his brain. It was incredibly painful, resulting in his being unable to concentrate. The so-called White Dragon Storm was a storm that occurred high in the sky, in the airspace between Dongming Province and Zaihe Province. It was still a mystery how the storm formed. According to legends, a white dragon died in battle during the ancient era here. After it died, its spirit lingered and wandered around the sky in this area. The storm was also said to be formed by the white dragon. Because people had seen a huge white dragon in the storm, they called this storm White Dragon Storm. Along the way, Xiao Chen had heard of the legend of White Dragon Storm. However, he did not pay it too much mind. Although the White Dragon Storm had a horrifying might, it had not appeared for decades. He did not expect his luck to be so bad. Xiao Chen then noticed a clear river flowing on the ground. This resulted in his originally despaired face to turn to one of joy. However, the pain in his head became stronger and stronger. A boundless and limitless essence was stuck in his chest. This resentment seemed like it came from tens of thousands of years ago. It was like a huge stone weight, thousands of kilograms, pressing on him, making him feel like he was unable to breathe. There was a loud, "Pu Tong." Xiao Chen fell from thousands of meters high into the river. Even though he fell into the soft water, he had fallen from a very great height, resulting in Xiao Chen suffering damage. Even though Xiao Chen's body was tempered to the extreme, his internal organs churned. He vomited a mouthful of blood and fainted. Xiao Chen's body slowly sank into the river and began flowing along with the river. The azure dragon was fond of the water. While Xiao Chen was unconscious, it automatically helped Xiao Chen breathe. Xiao Chen would not drown in the water. This continued for 3 days. The resentment in Xiao Chen's mind did not disappear. The reason he had not woken yet was the result of the resentment continually harassing his consciousness. Finally, Xiao Chen flowed downstream to a pool of water before he stopped moving. In the cold pool of water, there was a special cold qi. As Xiao Chen laid underwater, the cold qi entered through his skin and infiltrated Xiao Chen's body. This cold qi was different from the one the White Dragon Storm possessed. It was not as tyrannical, and it made one calm instead. Under the nourishment of this cold qi, Xiao Chen slowly opened his eyes. However, the resentment in his mind had not disappeared. It was torturing him continuously, causing him incredible pain. Xiao Chen was unable to move as a result. Xiao Chen felt like he was going crazy. There were countless roars in his mind. It was like the white dragon was roaring into his ear. It was impossible to get rid of. Xiao Chen did his best to calm down as he slowly circulated the purple thunder divine incantation. He hoped to be able to alleviate this strange feeling. After some time, the essence in his body started to slowly circulate. Xiao Chen's mind immediately felt better. He could not help but feel joy. Pu Si. Just as Xiao Chen was about to relax, the pain in his mind suddenly multiplied by several folds. It was so painful, he wanted to shout out. However, he was unable to say anything while underwater. The essence in his body immediately went out of control. The essence started to circulate randomly. Some of the essence even broke free of control completely and went against the flow. A horrifying phrase appeared in Xiao Chen's mind. Berserking Qi Deviation. To every cultivator, berserking Qi Deviation was a state of absolute disaster. It was a phrase that would cause one to pale just by mentioning it. If a suitable solution were not found, at best, the cultivator would suffer serious injuries, but the worst-case scenario was death. With Xiao Chen's current cultivation, berserking Qi Deviation should be something he should not have come in contact with. He was only a superior grade martial master. Many of the meridians in his body had not opened yet. The root's essence could take while circulating were limited. It did not fit the conditions for berserking Qi Deviation to occur. Normally, it would only be possible after one reached the martial saint realm, as they would have already opened at least half the meridians in their body. However, because of the incomparably strange resentment in his mind, His essence went berserk, flowing in reverse and resisting control. This was clearly the early signs of berserking chi deviation. Xiao Chen was very anxious, but he was not able to focus due to the pain in his mind. He was not able to do anything to the berserking essence in his body. Pooh! Pooh! Just at this moment, a figure jumped into the water from above. Xiao Chen was able to make out a blurry figure through the hazy water. It was a magnificent naked body swimming at the water surface. Xiao Chen, who had never seen such a scene, was immediately attracted by it. He immediately was able to focus. After he was able to focus, his berserk essence in his body started to calm down. The surprising thing was when the purple thunder divine incantation circulated again, the pain in his mind started to vanish slowly. Splash. There were splashes of water as the girl at the water surface closed her eyes and swam downward in a leisurely manner. Xiao Chen was startled. The girl was swimming in his direction. As the distance closed, the view got clearer. The splendid naked body of the girl appeared clearly before his eyes. Xiao Chen could not help but show a reaction at a certain area. Who? The girl suddenly opened her eyes. Xiao Chen and the girl were almost face to face. The two of them looked at each other, both were very surprised. The world went silent at that moment, leaving behind only their heartbeats. The two of them looked at each other without making any movements. Suddenly, the girl reacted and blushed heavily. The spatial ring on her ring hand glowed, and a slender saber about 2 fingers wide appeared. There was a hot chi emitted by it. The river water immediately started boiling, countless bubbles started to rise upwards. Boom! The surrounding water seemed as though they were unable to restrain her movements. The saber blade sliced rapidly through the water toward Xiao Chen's neck. Xiao Chen was startled. Under the threat of death, his previously immobile body suddenly dodged to the side. The blade created a shockwave in the water and struck the mud at the bottom, creating a huge splash. The girl was like a fish in water. She instantly caught up with Xiao Chen and sent another saber strike his way. After recovering his body movements, Xiao Chen immediately executed the Azure Dragon cloud soaring art. He soared out of the water like a flood dragon. Xiao Chen breathed in deeply, welcoming in the fresh air. Pu Tong. The girl also leapt out of the water, creating a huge wave. The wave was like a saber blade as it smashed toward Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen did not dare go head-on with it. He pushed off the surface of the water and landed on the riverbank. The girl took advantage of this opportunity to grab the clothes on the riverbank and quickly put them on. When she landed, she was properly dressed, covering all the important parts of her body. When the wave crashed into the water, and the surface calmed, Xiao Chen finally saw what the girl looked like. Wet long, black hair fell behind her back. She was dressed in a fiery red dress. 2 large mounds stood proudly on her chest, adorning her exquisite figure. She was as pure as jade. Her flesh was devoid of fat. Like a flower that just emerged from the water, she was untainted. This was a girl with the body of a demon and the face of an angel. However, this girl was currently furious and completely red. Her eyes looked as though they were going to spit fire. Her lips quivered as her tiny mouth made a melodious sound. Damn obscene bastard. How dare you peep at this lady while bathing? The saber in her hand trembled slightly and gave off a melodious cry. It was as though it felt the rage of its owner. It vibrated continuously, creating countless echoes in the air. Listening to the sword and communicating with it, Xiao Chen was very astonished. This girl was actually like Ao Zhao. Her level of comprehension of weapons had reached the level of listening to the sword and communicating with it. This was a level that many martial kings sought. However, the current situation did not leave Xiao Chen any time to be astonished. This was because the girl already drew her saber and leapt across the water, arriving instantly before him. There was a resplendent glow on her saber. This was a technique only martial grand masters and above could perform. Infusing the saber with essence and turning it into saber light. Drawing the saber. Xiao Chen quickly drew his saber. His lunar shadow saber clashed with the girl's saber light, resulting in an explosion. The huge force carried by the saber light blasted Xiao Chen back. Xiao Chen was incomparably shocked. This was the first time he lost regarding strength against a martial grand master. Furthermore, he was using drawing the saber. Who? Xiao Chen executed the Azure Dragon Cloud Soaring art, and he stopped in midair in a strange manner. Then he changed his angle and disappeared. It could be said this girl had saved Xiao Chen's life. However, Xiao Chen was unable to explain it to her now. The girl was currently fuming and he would definitely not be able to explain it clearly. Seems like he would have to carry the name, obscene bastard, temporarily and explain it at a later time. Boom. Just when Xiao Chen thought he would be able to escape the girl using the Azure Dragon Cloud Soaring art, he discovered the girl appeared right behind him like a ghost. She used a horrifying saber light to chop at him again. Although Xiao Chen was astonished, he did not panic. He executed the Azure Dragon Cloud Soaring art to its extreme. His body soared into the air, zigzagging left and right, like a soaring azure dragon. Boom. 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 However, the girl was like glue. She stuck to Xiao Chen tightly, sending out horrifying saber lights continuously. She struck Xiao Chen quite a few times. Damn obscene bastard. If you have the guts, stand still and fight me. If you are a man, stop running, the girl cursed as she chased. When the saber lights landed on the ground, they created a series of tiny gorges. When one looked at them carefully, one would discover they seemed to contain a certain Tao in it. Xiao Chen traveled for a few hundred meters, but he was still unable to lose the girl. Suddenly, he thought about one of the 6 secret formulas from the Battle Sage Origins, sticky character formula. No matter how fast is the opponent, as long as one used the sticky character formula, they would be able to chase after them. It was the most miraculous movement technique in the world. Xiao Chen could not help being astonished. If it were truly the case, then as long as his Azure Dragon Cloud Soaring art did not reach the great perfection, he would not be able to shake her off. This won't do, she will catch up to me sooner or later, Xiao Chen thought to himself anxiously. Xiao Chen avoided another saber light and thought of an idea. Suddenly, he turned around and looked at the girl. He said, "Look into my eyes." The girl suddenly stopped. It was obvious she was stunned by Xiao Chen's suddenly actions. Who? Suddenly, a purple flame shot out of his right eye. Bastard. After a moment of shock, the girl sent out a saber light at the purple flame. There was a loud explosion, creating a surging shockwave. The girl was forced back. When the shockwave dissipated, Xiao Chen used the lightning evasion and reappeared hundreds of meters away. He summoned the silver warship and soared into the sky. The girl thought of Xiao Chen's previous actions and could not help but scold herself. He asked you to look, and you looked. You should have just killed him with a strike. Why speak so much crap with him? I have offended you badly today. I will repay the gratitude of saving my life in future. Furthermore, I'm not an obscene bastard. Please do not misunderstand. Xiao Chen's voice came from high above. The girl stomped on the ground violently. Her face was completely red. She watched the leaving Xiao Chen and cursed, "You still say you are not an obscene bastard. Even your boat is silver. All I need is one glance to know it is not something good." TL note. I'm not too sure the implications of a silver boat. My guess is that silver sounds like evil in Chinese. Young mistress. What's wrong? Are you alright? Not long after Xiao Chen left, 2 female martial saints rushed over. The girl looked in the direction Xiao Chen left and said, "I'm fine, I just ran into a rascal." Xiao Chen rode on the silver warship and flew high in the sky. He did not hear what the girl said, otherwise, he would have painted the silver warship another color. Not long after, Xiao Chen saw a big road, and he stopped. Now that many people knew Xiao Chen possessed a silver warship, it was best not to use it unless he needed to. I do not know where is this. Have I reached Zaihe province yet? Xiao Chen said to himself after he landed on the ground. He saw there were no one on the road. Xiao Chen looked carefully at the surface of the road. There were fresh footprints and wheel marks on the ground. This meant people frequently used this road. It was just that there was no one on it now. He carefully inspected the condition of his body and did not find any major problems. Then he decided to continue walking forward. The previous experience created a great fear in his heart. He did not dare to be careless. He had, unfortunately, run into the white dragon storm that had not appeared for decades. Xiao Chen was not able to understand what was going on. The surging resentment and bone-piercing pain he experienced led him to feel this was perhaps not a coincidence. White dragon, azure dragon. Are they related? Xiao Chen was filled with doubt as he thought. He still did not completely understand the azure dragon in his body. He did not know what abilities it had. Seeing there was nobody around, Xiao Chen stopped. The azure dragon in his body slowly came out of his dantian with a thought. It moved along the meridians and came out of Xiao Chen's palm. Everywhere it passed, Xiao Chen could feel a horrifying energy. Under Xiao Chen's control, it came out with a "hoo" sound and coiled around his wrist. After a cultivator became a martial master, they would be able to make the martial spirit leave the body. It would be possible to obtain unimaginable results in a fight. However, after a martial spirit left the body and got injured, it would be possible the cultivator could be crippled. Unless they were desperate and pushed to a corner, no cultivator would release their martial spirit. Not until they became a martial king. By then, the martial spirit would have been cultivated till it became undying. Even if it were destroyed outside the body, it would be able to regenerate inside the body. Xiao Chen looked at the tiny azure dragon coiled around his wrist. He thought for a long time but did not understand anything. Aside from providing me with energy and being slightly stronger than other martial spirits, I don't see how are you different from other martial spirits, even though you are an ancient holy beast. Xiao Chen shook his head and recollected his thoughts. He withdrew the azure dragon into his body and stopped thinking about the problem. Everything would be fine when the time came. The inheritance of the azure dragon had been broken for thousands of years. It was impossible for him to understand everything. There was no use thinking too much. Xiao Chen continued walking forward, and after an hour, he finally met someone. He quickly inquired where he was, and if he had reached Zaihe province already. That person was dressed in white and carried a sword. There was not a speck of dust on him. He did not even turn his head as he answered, Zaihe province, Yuluo prefecture, Yunyang county, capital city. Xiao Chen was not bothered by this person's attitude. He recalled the maps he saw previously in his mind. The heavenly Saber pavilion was situated in the Yuluo prefecture. It was not too far from Yunyang city. Even if he walked, it would only require 2 weeks. An expression of joy appeared on his face. Xiao Chen extended his spiritual sense to look around. Finally, at the limits of his spiritual sense, he saw a magnificent city. There were 2 huge bold, Yunyang, words on the city gates. They seemed very ancient. Xiao Chen withdrew his spiritual sense and pushed his feet off the ground. He executed the azure dragon cloud soaring art and created a cloud of dust. He dashed forward, quickly catching up with the person he spoke with earlier in the blink of an eye before overtaking him and kicking up a large cloud of dust. Did not expect him to be an expert, the white-clothed person said indifferently as he looked in the direction Xiao Chen traveled. This person did not make any movement. The dust that landed on his clothes automatically slid off. He slowly walked forward, coming out from the cloud of dust that filled the air. His white clothes remained clean, without a speck of dust on them. Xiao Chen felt a strong gaze sweep past him before vanishing quickly. When he turned his head around, he did not discover anything. He only saw the cloud of dust he left behind as he dashed forward. Yunyang city was already within his vision. Xiao Chen slowed and walked slowly. When he arrived at the city gates, he discovered many young women filled the front of the city gates. They were all standing there, chatting with each other. It was an incredible view. Is this a custom of Yunyang city? Xiao Chen asked in confusion. With so many girls here, it was possible all the young girls of Yunyang city were here. When the group of girls saw Xiao Chen's figure, they were initially filled with joy and ran over. When they saw Xiao Chen's appearance clearly, they were all filled with disappointment, cursing as they left. Xiao Chen did not understand what was going on. When the guard saw the situation, he smiled, "Don't be angry. The girls have waited here for a whole morning. It is no wonder they are in a bad mood." Xiao Chen paid the entry fee and could not help but find it funny when he heard that. This was very similar to the female fans of his previous life. He did not expect such a thing to happen in this world, as well. He could not help but ask out of curiosity, just who has such great charms, to be able to get all the young girls of Yunyang city to come out here to wait for him. The guard looked at Xiao Chen in shock. He said, "You don't know this. Today is the day of Mu Chengshui's and Leng Liasu's annual battle. These girls are here to see Mu Chengshui. This was not the first time Xiao Chen heard this name. When he heard this name again, he could not help but be interested. He started to inquire for more information from the guard. The city guard was very chatty. When he saw Xiao Chen asking for more information, he began telling him everything. Mu Chengshui came from Nanling Province's Night Spirit Palace. He was the successor of the Night Spirit Palace. Together with Ji Changkong, they were known as the Nanling Twin Stars. They both had extremely good talent and became famous when they were young. By the time he was 12, he was unrivaled within the generation. Aside from Ji Changkong, he had no opponents. That year, they both left Nanling Province and started to challenge all the young experts around the world. Ji Changkong went to the imperial capital, and Mu Chengshui went to Zaihe Province and Dongming Province. Within the same generation, these two were practically unrivaled. There was no one who was an opponent to them. However, they both each lost to a woman. Ji Changkong lost to Princess Yingyu. Mu Chengshui lost to Leng Liasu of Heavenly Saber Pavilion, who is also known as Little Heavenly Saber. 1 year later, Mu Chengshui came to Nanling Province again to duel with Leng Liasu. The two of them exchanged more than 1,000 moves and ended in a draw. They then made arrangements to duel again the next year. Just like that, it became a tradition. Every year, Mu Chengshui would come to Yunyang City to duel Leng Liasu around this time of the year. Aside from having a monstrous talent, Mu Chengshui was very handsome as well. After coming to Yunyang City a few times, all the young girls in the city knew of him. Xiao Chen smiled faintly and thanked the guard before walking into Yunyang City. Regardless of the world, the young girls all seemed to have the quality of chasing after their idols. Leng Liasu. Could that be her? A pretty figure appeared in Xiao Chen's mind. After a moment, the more he thought about it, the more he thought it was likely to be so. He could not help but feel a headache coming on. His purpose in coming here was the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. In the end, before he entered it, he had already offended the beloved youngest daughter of the pavilion master. Mu Chengshui is here. As Xiao Chen walked on, there was a clamor of joy coming from behind him. Xiao Chen turned around and saw a male dressed in white holding a sword. He was surrounded by girls. He revealed a faint, mild smile as he dealt with them one by one. Xiao Chen could not help but feel astonished. This Mu Chengshui was actually the person he asked for directions from. He could not help but smile faintly. This world is truly strange. After Xiao Chen spoke, he turned around. In that instant, Xiao Chen felt a strong gaze observing him again. This time it was not hidden. That gaze came from Mu Chengshui. Xiao Chen resisted turning around. He asked around for the location of Yunyang City's Liushang Pavilion and quickly left. Mu Chengshui, who was surrounded by girls, watched Xiao Chen leave. The corners of his mouth curled up to reveal a strange, faint smile. There was a purple copper mirror floating in the boundless void in his left eye. The light the copper mirror gave off seemed as though it would be able to see the truth of everything in the world. No one noticed anything when the copper mirror flashed in his eye. After asking around, Xiao Chen found out Liushang Pavilion did indeed have a branch in Yunyang City. Xiao Chen took out a diamond VIP card the fatty handed to him before he left. He could not help but sigh. This fatty was not bragging indeed. No matter where it is, there will be a Liushang Pavilion. The Liushang Pavilion in Yunyang City was exactly the same as the one in Whitewater City. Its business was booming as well. Its basic structure was pretty much the same too. Xiao Chen went past the first floor and headed to the second floor. There was a group of cultivators discussing the duel that was going to take place today. Last year, the two of them fought to a draw. That was the third time they drew. In the end, Mu Chengshui lost once before. He is not able to defeat the top expert of Arshihi province. That might not necessarily be so. The previous few times, Leng Liasu had the weapons advantage. This time, I heard Mu Chengshui has completed the Heavenly Pass trial in the Night Spirit Palace and obtained a damaged holy weapon. I know about this. It is a holy sword known as Beauty Under the Moon. During this period, Mu Chengshui had tested the sword out and killed a martial saint personally. From the look of things, Beauty Under the Moon is comparable to Leng Liasu's Burning Soul. They are both incomplete holy weapons. It's getting more interesting now. On the second floor, there were some extremely knowledgeable cultivators. When Xiao Chen heard what they said, he could not help but slow down to listen. Make way. Make way. Our Yan clan's young master is coming. Why are you still not giving way? Just at this moment, Yan Qianyan led a group of servants up the stairs quickly. The people around swiftly moved to a side. Seeing Yan Qianyan, Xiao Chen's eyebrow could not help but twitch. He did not expect to meet him here. Xiao Chen remembered a certain legend about the fatty. He looked at his crotch area and could not help but smile. Xiao Chen did not wish to seek trouble. When Yan Qianyan came up, he moved to a side to let him pass. Yan Qianyan led a group of people and walked past him. He threw a hurried glance at Xiao Chen and walked away. After 2 steps, he turned back. Why do I feel you are familiar? Have we met? Yan Qianyan asked carefully as he stared at Xiao Chen's eyes. Xiao Chen was not worried. Aside from changing his appearance, the shapeshifting spell could change his aura and voice as well. Xiao Chen smiled and said, perhaps we saw each other in a crowd before, there is nothing strange about being familiar. Yan Qianyan smiled faintly. He thought for a while and said, maybe. Probably just a face in the crowd, or it could be that I recognized the wrong person. Goodbye. Boom. Yan Qianyan, who turned around, suddenly turned back and kicked Xiao Chen's chest. Xiao Chen's mouth curled up in a cold smile and did not resist. He sucked in his stomach slightly. Bang. Yan Qianyan put a lot of force behind this kick and knocked Xiao Chen flying back. However, because Xiao Chen had made preparations earlier, he only suffered some minor injuries. Yan Qianyan frowned slightly, as though he found something strange. After some time, he threw down a banknote and said, my apologies, I believed I recognized the wrong person. After Yan Qianyan and his group left, the second floor bustled again. A kind-hearted cultivator helped Xiao Chen up and said, little brother, are you alright? Xiao Chen picked up the banknote and smiled faintly, I'm fine. Despite being hit for no reason, it is still pretty good to pick up a banknote for 1,000 silvers. On the third floor, in front of a hidden window, Yan Qianyan watched as Xiao Chen got up. He said, in a manner filled with doubt, could I have seen wrong? However, I am sure of those eyes. He observed for a long time, but he was unable to discover anything wrong in the end. He shook his head. He felt as though there was something he was missing. He spoke to the person beside him. There was something wrong with that person earlier. You guys follow him and check it out. I still have some business with young Master Leng. Xiao Chen had been observing Yan Qianyan with his spiritual sense. At this moment, he withdrew his spiritual sense. He could not help but sigh. It looked like the mental trauma this fellow suffered was too much for him. He already changed his appearance so much, and yet he was still able to recognize him. Not long later, the cultivators on the second floor all left. Xiao Chen knew Leng Liasu's and knew Chengshui's duel was going to start. This was something these people anticipated for a year. There was no reason for them not to go. Xiao Chen was not in a rush to leave. He did not wish to watch the duel between them. New Chengshui gave him a very dangerous feeling, a feeling that he only felt from Chu Chaoyun. As for Leng Liasu, there was no need to speak of it. After finishing his food, Xiao Chen casually took a look at the third floor. He revealed a mocking smile. He called the waiter over to pay the bill and leave. On the third floor, Yan Qianyan's followers were watching Xiao Chen closely. As the waiter was collecting payment, he happened to block Xiao Chen's figure. When he collected the payment, cleared the table, and left, the few people watching discovered Xiao Chen was missing. Where is he? Where did he go to? I saw him clearly there earlier. How did he disappear after the waiter went over? Seeing Xiao Chen disappear right under their noses, they panicked and rushed down. One of them grabbed the waiter's clothes and shouted, where is he? Where did that person from earlier go? The waiter rolled his eyes and looked at them in disdain. He said, of course, he left after eating and paying. I'm asking how did he leave? The waiter pushed his hand away and said, in a bad mood, I'm only going to say it once. He walked off on his feet. Stop disturbing me, thank you. The attitude of the waiter made him anxious. He wanted to make a move on the spot, but the people around him stopped him. They explained Liusheng Pavilion's background to him. The few of them searched around, but they could not find Xiao Chen. They believed Xiao Chen had left Liusheng Pavilion. They thought of Yan Qianyan's instructions and quickly went down. Using the shape-shifting spell, Xiao Chen shrunk himself and hidden under the table. Watching the four men leave, he quickly came out. His bones cracked as he recovered his normal height. He extended his spiritual sense and discovered Yan Qianyan and a black-clothed man seated on the 5th floor. The black-clothed man seemed very strong. His aura was much stronger than Yan Qianyan, like a treasured sword drawn out of its sheath. Xiao Chen did not dare go too close to him with his spiritual sense. Thinking for a while, Xiao Chen headed directly for the 4th floor. He flashed the VIP card the fatty gave him. No one obstructed his path. Xiao Chen was surprised the 3rd and 4th floor were void of people. It seemed the duel between Leng Liasu and Mu Chengshe was very attractive. Xiao Chen arrived at the staircase between the 4th and 5th floor and inspected it carefully. It was only the area leading down to the 4th floor. He took out 2 rank 3 talismans from within the universe ring and placed them down before smearing them with some spirit beast saliva. This kind of saliva was very sticky. Once it is stuck to something, it would not come off easily. After doing all this, Xiao Chen found a private room on the 4th floor and sat down. Brother Leng, is the news this time reliable? Are there only 2 martial saints with Leng Liasu? Yan Qianyan asked the person across from him with a grave expression. Xiao Chen frowned. What is he trying to do? Is Yan Qianyan trying to do something to Leng Liasu? With a thought, he focused his spiritual sense. The black-clothed man seated across had a grave and stern expression as he replied, I, Leng Tianyu, have prepared many years just for this day. Do you think there would be any mistakes? Yan Qianyan laughed dryly. This matter is very important. Of course, I have to make sure. However, let me say this first. I am only responsible for sending people to lure away the 2 martial saints. You are responsible for the rest. There was no expression on Leng Tianyu's face as he said indifferently, all you have to do is lure them away. There is no need for you to concern yourself with the rest. As for the benefits you obtain after it is done, I have already told your father about them. After the 2 of them continued chatting for a long while, a messenger pigeon landed on Leng Tianyu's hand. He retrieved the note on its leg and smiled after a while. It is a draw again. Haha. I am starting to suspect Mu Chengshui's motivation. Brother Yan, let's go. It's time we made our move. The 2 of them got up and headed downstairs. The instant they went down, they stepped on talismans. The talismans that stuck were very light, they did not feel anything at all. Watching the 2 of them leave, Xiao Chen smiled faintly and got up slowly. He turned his spiritual sense into a thread and tied it around them. Should I try taking advantage of this situation? Xiao Chen pondered as he considered the situation. This person was clearly someone from the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. The fight in front of him was likely to be a fight for to be the successor of Heavenly Saber Pavilion. In the strong powers of every place, there would be countless talented people trying to stand out and take over. Xiao Chen did not find this strange. Even if he saw such a situation, he would not bother with it. However, if Leng Liasu were the girl from during the day, it would not do for him not to help out. Finally, Xiao Chen made his decision. If she really is that girl, we can consider it quits after this. Xiao Chen followed behind them, separated by a certain distance. Because Xiao Chen had the assistance of his spiritual sense, he was able to follow them easily. After a while, he followed them and left through the East City Gate. The further they went, the more desolate the area became. Finally, Xiao Chen could no longer see anyone on the big road. Xiao Chen felt something was wrong and hesitated on whether he should continue. After walking for a few more steps, he discovered Leng Tianyu and Yan Qianyan waiting there and smiling at him. Leng Tianyan slowly walked over, there was no expression on his face. He asked coldly, who sent you? Yan Qianyan stood to the side and smiled. Brother Leng, leave this person to me. He is after me. Just take the token and go inform them. Leng Tianyu glanced at Xiao Chen. He saw Xiao Chen was only a superior grade martial master and he relaxed. With Yan Qianyan's cultivation as a medial grade martial grand master, he should be able to kill this person easily. Finish this quickly and gather as soon as you can. After Leng Tianyan left, Yan Qianyan slowly walked over to Xiao Chen. He smiled coldly. Xiao Chen, I did not expect to see you there. I have waited for this day for a long time. How do you want to die? Xiao Chen muttered for a while before saying, I have a question. How did you recognize me? I believe I have hidden very well. How did you discover me? Yan Qianyan laughed and replied, I will never forget the look you gave me that day. I suppose I should enlighten you before you die. Leng Tianyu has a secret treasure. The moment you left Liusheng Pavilion, he discovered you. Xiao Chen nodded his head. So that was why. I wonder what kind of secret treasure it is, to actually be able to detect me from so far. However, this was no longer important. Xiao Chen said quietly to Yan Qianyan, thank you for your explanation. You can die now. Yan Qianyan snorted coldly and found it funny. He said, you think you are a match for me? Ah. Boom. Before he finished speaking, Xiao Chen made a hand seal, and the rank 3 fire cloud talisman stuck under Yan Qianyan's foot loudly exploded. A flame, along with a surging shockwave, spread out. The huge power sent Yan Qianyan flying into the sky. A rank 3 offensive talisman was the equivalent to the full-powered strike of a peak martial Grand Master. Yan Qianyan was caught off guard, and he immediately lost all his fighting capability. Drawing the saber, Xiao Chen leapt high into the air. His saber flashed, and Yan Qianyan's head separated from his completely burnt body. It fell to the ground with a thud. Xiao Chen landed firmly on the ground. He looked at Yan Qianyan's body without any expression. He removed his spatial ring and took out everything in it. Tens of inferior-grade spirit stones, some medicinal pills, and a stack of banknotes fell to the ground. Xiao Chen also saw an old yellow book, Inherited Martial Technique, Dragon Seizing Hand. The so-called inherited martial technique was something only people who inherited a certain martial spirit could learn. However, Xiao Chen had the Battle Sage Origins changing character formula and was able to imitate it. He took a quick look and placed it into the universe ring. Xiao Chen closed his eyes and felt the talisman stuck below Leng Tianyu's feet. The talisman contained some of Xiao Chen's essence blood. Even from thousands of kilometers away, he could feel it clearly. A faint yellow dot appeared in Xiao Chen's mind. Xiao Chen opened his eyes, and he summoned the silver warship. He leapt onto it, and it transformed into a silver flash of light. After a short period, Xiao Chen rushed to Leng Tianyu. Because he was wary of his secret treasure, Xiao Chen hid in a cloud above, observing the situation on the ground. Leng Tianyu was wearing a black mask standing still. In front of him, there were 4 martial grand masters wearing similar black masks surrounding Leng Liasu. While in the cloud, Xiao Chen used his spiritual sense to watch the fight. After he looked carefully at the girl's appearance, he was able to verify the person being surrounded was the same person as the one he met in the pool of water. This does not seem sufficient to kill a peak martial grand master with an inherited martial spirit. Xiao Chen stood on the bow and said with some doubt. There need to be at least 2 martial saints to be assured of success. Slowly, Xiao Chen saw the trick behind it. These 4 martial grand masters was using a combination martial technique. Every move they made was connected to each other. Furthermore, they had practiced with each other for a long time and could cooperate very well together. Sabers flashed, and energy waves flew around. There was a lot of shouting coming from the fight. Leng Liasu's slender saber released off a horrifying saber light. The wind blew strong, and dust flew up. At the end of it, there was a fissure in the ground. The fissure seemed to contain a Tao, radiating with the might of a sage. Leng Liasu weaved left and right amidst the 4 people, continually using the sticky character formula. However, she was unable to break out of the encirclement. However, there were no signs of panic on her face. She sent out a saber light using her saber again and blocked the combined attack of the 4 martial grand master as she watched Leng Tianyu. Her pretty face had a cold expression as she said in a low voice, Leng Tianyu, you really want to kill me that much? Is the successor's position so attractive to you? After everything you have done, are you not afraid your father will punish you after he finds out? It was impossible to see Leng Tianyu's expression behind the mask. He did not answer Leng Liasu's question. He said indifferently, are you all trash? Even after using a combination martial technique that can easily take down a martial saint, you are still unable to take her down, despite half an hour passing already. After the four people heard Leng Tianyu's reprimand, they could not help but increase the amount of force they used. Leng Liasu received attacks that were even stronger. Phoenix Cry. Dragon Roar. Tiger Roar. Black Turtle. After the four of them saw the battle was being dragged out, they unanimously made a decision and leapt while shouting. This was the most powerful move of the combination martial technique. Four figures appeared on their weapons: Divine Phoenix, Azure Dragon, White Tiger, Black Turtle. These ancient holy beasts appeared within the formation as if they were alive. Four beasts combined to one. The holy beasts all cried out and the holy beasts' might combined. It made one feel like they could not breathe. The air seemed to solidify under this might. Xiao Chen felt some shock as he stood on the bow, carefully observing the scene. He finally discovered the martial spirit of the four people contained a trace of the holy beast's bloodline. Although they were very powerful when released alone, it was even more horrifying when they were released together. I wonder where Leng Tianyu found these four people. Watching the way they cooperate with each other, they should have trained together since youth. Leng Liasu frowned slightly. Her red dress fluttered wildly in the wind. As she watched the four beasts combined to one technique in the sky, she did not show any fear. The wind blew strongly, and her fine black hair fluttered in the wind. Her long dress surged and moved like waves. All this, combined with her pure face and her excellent figure, made her look like an ancient war goddess as she stood her ground. Burning Soul, Sage's Rage, Fire Dance. Leng Liasu held the saber in her right hand and slowly slit her left palm. Fresh, red blood flowed along the saber blade and dripped onto the ground. The blood seemed to have made use of the fissure containing the sage's dows to summon the ancient sage within the holy weapon. It is indeed a weapon the sages used. What a strong righteous chi. Xiao Chen, who was within the clouds, said in astonishment. Boom. A flame rose up to the sky from the fissure on the ground. There was an angry roar coming from the red flames. It seemed as though it had transcended space and time, coming from tens of thousands of years ago. Leng Liasu stood within the flames. The flickering light from the fire shone on her completely red face. She leapt high into the air, her saber carrying a boundless and limitless flame. Bang! Like breaking a branch from a tree, the saber, carrying the flames of the sage's might, instantly broke through the four beasts combined to one. The divine phoenix shattered, the black turtle fled, the azure dragon was chopped in half, and the white tiger was burned to ashes. Bang! 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 The four of them landed heavily on the ground. Their martial spirits received fatal damage. Their faces were incredibly pale. They had temporarily lost all combat capability. Ka-ca. Just at that moment, Leng Tianyu suddenly made his move. A cold light appeared, there was only the flash of a saber. Leng Tianyu was now beside Leng Liasu. The speed of the saber was extremely fast. The timing was also very good. He executed it as the sage's might Leng Liasu used diminished. If he gave her time to recover, the odds of this strike injuring her would be low. Even if Leng Liasu already anticipated this attack, she would have no way to evade. The saber slashed down, and it left a wound on Leng Liasu's chest. Blood spurted into the air. Leng Liasu frowned and revealed an expression of pain. The saber in her hand slashed out before her. The saber landed on Leng Tianyu, but it felt as if it hit air. It was just an afterimage. Leng Tianyu already dodged to her side. He snorted coldly and kicked out, causing the injured Leng Liasu to fall. The force of his kick was very strong. Leng Liasu skidded along the ground without stopping. She stuck her saber into the ground and created a long gouge before she managed to stand slowly. Leng Tianyu said nothing. He did not wish to leave any opening for Leng Liasu. His figure flashed in the sky. As he was landing, there was a resplendent saber light on his saber, chopping towards Leng Liasu. Leng Liasu did her best to raise her saber and block, but she was unable to do so. She flew backward like a cannonball, landing heavily on the ground. Xiao Chen's complexion changed. He did not expect the situation to change within such a short amount of time. Originally, he watched as Leng Liasu was about to deal with those four people alone and thought he did not have to interfere. Lightning descend. A bolt of lightning descended from the sky and successfully interrupted Leng Tianyu's advancement. Xiao Chen used the changing character formula to imitate Ji Chengkong's martial technique. He transformed into a meteor and flew downward rapidly. Leng Tianyu looked at the meteor in the sky and frowned. The Nanling province's Ji clan's martial technique. Is Ji Chengkong here? That can't be, this is not the pure Ji clan's martial technique. A scammer, I will make you reveal your true self. Leng Tianyu laughed coldly and leapt up. He left behind afterimages in the sky. His speed was raised to his peak. A bright glow appeared on his saber as it chopped violently at Xiao Chen. Boom. Xiao Chen revealed himself and shouted lightly. A red firework soared into the sky. Before Leng Tianyu could understand what was going on, he had already been blasted, lacerating his flesh. His body was flung high into the sky by the shockwave. Purple thunder, true fire. Shoot. Seeing Leng Tianyu in the sky, Xiao Chen felt he did not receive any fatal damage from the blast of the rank 3 exploding talisman. He could not help but feel anxious. He revolved the purple flame around his finger and fired continuously at Leng Tianyu. A protective barrier surrounded Leng Tianyu. The purple flames exploded on the barrier, their shockwaves sending him further up into the sky. However, they were not able to damage him. Xiao Chen pierced through the barrier with his spiritual sense and saw a piece of jade on his chest. It was giving off a faint radiance. This should be his secret treasure. The barrier should be a result of this secret treasure. When Xiao Chen landed, he saw Leng Liasu was extremely pale and had fainted from excessive loss of blood. After hesitating for a while, he carried her on his shoulder and flew off into the distance. He executed the Azure Dragon Cloud soaring art to the extreme and disappeared in the blink of an eye. After a long while, Leng Tianyu descended from the sky. His clothes were tattered. He had a dark look on his face. His mask had disappeared long ago. He struggled for a while before he managed to stand up. He watched as Xiao Chen left with Leng Liasu. His eyes revealed an extremely complicated expression. He muttered to himself, man proposes, but God disposes. He turned around and struck the 4 cultivators on the ground with his saber. Then he expressionlessly turned back and headed to Yunyang City alone. Xiao Chen carried Leng Liasu and walked for a long time. He arrived at the forest and stopped when he felt there was no one chasing him. He slowly placed Leng Liasu by a tree. He saw the horrifying wound on her chest and felt astonished. Leng Tianyu's strike was vicious. Not only was it fast, but its might was shocking as well. Even the golden armor Leng Liasu wore on her chest was broken. There was still blood flowing out of the wound, dyeing the armor red. Xiao Chen pressed on a few acupoints on Leng Liasu's chest, stopping the bleeding. Then he slowly removed her outer clothing. Soon, he found his thought was not realistic. Leng Liasu wore a long red dress, the top was connected to the bottom. If he wanted to remove it, he had to remove everything. Naturally, Xiao Chen was not able to do such a thing. He could only take out a small knife and cut the cloth from the top. After the clothes were cut, large patches of snow-white skin were revealed to Xiao Chen. It was very distracting, but Xiao Chen focused himself and carefully cleaned the wound. There was some cloth stuck in the wound. When Xiao Chen slowly pulled it out, the unconscious Leng Liasu moaned painfully. Xiao Chen could not help but be more gentle. After cleaning the wound, Xiao Chen took out a blood-replenishing pill and crushed it. He slowly applied the powder to the wound, then took out another blood-replenishing pill and fed it into her mouth. After doing all this, Xiao Chen slowly relaxed. It was a good thing her heart was not wounded. However, the wound was quite deep. With the medicinal strength of the blood-replenishing pill, there should not be too many problems. He took out a set of clean clothes from the universe ring and covered her with them. Her pale face looked very gentle at the moment. Suddenly, Xiao Chen felt this scene to be very familiar. He immediately thought of the time in Gloomy Forest. He had also met Princess Yingyu in such circumstances as well. Regardless of how strong a woman is, she would still have a gentle side. He took out a bottle of qi-returning pills and a bottle of blood-replenishing pills. Then he wrote a note describing and introducing the medicinal pills. After that, he placed them at Leng Liasu's side. Xiao Chen pushed off the ground and leapt up a big tree. Xiao Chen sat down crossed-legged and calmed himself. He entered a state of cultivation and released his aura completely, causing the nearby wild beasts not to come near. Time flew by, and night approached. Although Xiao Chen was deep in cultivation, he kept a strand of spiritual sense by Leng Liasu, monitoring her condition at all times. "Father, don't go." In the middle of the night, as Xiao Chen sat on a tree branch, he heard some weak muttering. He slowly descended from the tree and walked to Leng Liasu's side. Leng Liasu's face was very pale, her forehead was covered with sweat. She was frowning very hard, and her breathing was rapid and shallow. It was obvious she was having a bad dream and was currently under a lot of stress. Xiao Chen stretched his hand out and placed it on her forehead. Then, he slowly sent a strand of gentle essence into her. Because Xiao Chen cultivated the Purple Thunder Divine Incantation, his essence had some of the effects of immortal qi. After a while, Leng Liasu's expression slowly became soft. Her breathing turned calm and steady, and she stopped frowning. Xiao Chen heaved a sigh of relief and stopped infusing essence into her. He withdrew his hand and prepared to leave. Pooh! Just as Xiao Chen pulled his hand away, Leng Liasu caught it. Her eyes were shut, and it seemed as though she was sleep-talking. "Father, don't go, don't leave Liasu alone." Leng Liasu held Xiao Chen's hand very tightly. Xiao Chen felt embarrassed in his heart. He smiled bitterly and thought to himself, "Sister, you recognize the wrong person. Please don't hold me so tightly." Xiao Chen did his best to pry her hands off, but he found that if he did not use essence, he was unable to do so. He was afraid that he would wake her up if he used essence. Thus, he could only slowly sit and not make any big movements. He could not even sleep or cultivate. He kept his eyes open and guarded her. The night was very dark in the quiet forest. When he stretched his hand out, he was not able to see his fingers. Xiao Chen sat beside Leng Liasu and listened to her breathe calmly. He did not move even though he felt uncomfortable. When it was almost day, Xiao Chen finally felt Leng Liasu loosen her grip. He quickly pulled his hand away and inspected her wound once again. He discovered there were no major problems anymore. All she needed was rest now. Xiao Chen stood up and felt his back ache. After spending the night without sleep, he was mentally fatigued. He slapped his cheeks and looked towards the brightening eastern sky as he prepared to leave. "You have unintentionally saved my life. Now, I have saved yours too, as well as spent a night comforting you. We should be even now." Xiao Chen faintly smiled and said as he looked at Leng Liasu. After he took 2 steps, he suddenly stopped. He felt as if he had lost out on something. He muttered to himself, "Am I considered not even comparable to beasts? After stripping a great beauty and lying beside her for a night, I did not even react at all. That can't do." Xiao Chen quickly came back and looked at Leng Liasu's pretty face. He took a deep breath and then quickly kissed her on the forehead. After that, he immediately dashed off. The asleep Leng Liasu did not have any reaction. When the sky was bright, and the first rays of sunshine struck her face, she slowly woke up. She slowly opened her eyes, feeling the sun was too bright. Leng Liasu then saw she was covered with some clothes. She revealed an expression of confusion. "Did someone save me? Who did?" Before she fell unconscious yesterday, the last memory she had was of lightning falling from the sky. She was not aware of what happened after that. She slowly stood up and pushed the clothes to the side. Finally, she discovered the upper part of her dress had been torn to shreds. She was revealing a significant part of her chest. She could not help but blush deeply. However, she was surprised the wound on her chest healed within a night. It actually healed miraculously. The wound had already closed. Although there was still some numbness, it was obvious it would no longer be a big problem. Furthermore, it was dealt with promptly. There would not be any scarring in the future. Who in the world saved me? This person should not be from Heavenly Saber Pavilion. Leng Liasu's mind was filled with doubt. If it were, then that person would still be by my side. Suddenly, she thought of the dream she had last night. It felt like her late father appeared beside her. She even held his hand and told him not to leave. It felt like it was real. Leng Liasu took out a set of clothing from her spatial ring. After she changed into it, she suddenly discovered the 2 bottles of pills. She bent over and picked them up, opening them to take a look. When she did so, a dense medicinal fragrance came out. It was obvious the rank of these medicinal pills was very high. She picked up the note that introduced the pill and read it carefully. The questions she had in her heart increased. Who in the world saved me? Furthermore, he was so meticulous about it. She walked around, searching her surroundings, but she did not find anything. She could not help but feel some regret. She lowered her head and leaned on the tree again. However, she was shocked to discover the marks of someone sitting in the spot beside her for a long time. Heavenly Saber Pavilion was one of the three great sects of the Great Qin nation. It had been around since the Tianwu dynasty and had 10,000 years of accumulation. In the hearts of the people of the Great Qin nation, they were an existence similar to the Holy Lands. As its name implied, this was a sect that focused on the path of the saber. All the martial techniques, movement techniques, or cultivation methods were related to sabers. It was a holy ground for someone who cultivated the path of the saber. The Misty Sword sect was the same, just that it was for swords. They had always been in opposition to each other since the ancient times. Both sects erupted out in war multiple times throughout history. However, the strength of the two sects was similar, neither of them could stand ahead of the other. However, in recent years, about 20 years ago, the Heavenly Saber Pavilion experienced a mysterious disaster. Many of the experts of the senior generation were severely injured or had perished. This resulted in their strength being decreased. Even so, no one dared to look down on the strength of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. It had not lost the martial techniques it passed down for tens of thousands of years. With the system in place, they would raise back to the peak again someday. It was located in Lingyun Mountain Range. Lingyun Mountain Range was one of the Great Qin nation's 4 great mountain ranges. There were 7 huge peaks, and it was one of the places within the Great Qin nation with the most concentrated spiritual energy. When one cultivated there, their cultivation realm would rise much faster than others would. Furthermore, there was a comprehensive martial technique program and limitless cultivation resources. This resulted in many people wanting to join the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. At the foot of Lingyun Mountain Range, there was a city no smaller than Whitewater City. It was called Saber City. Saber City belonged to Heavenly Saber Pavilion. All the land, shops, auction house, and markets belonged to Heavenly Saber Pavilion. Saber City was also known as Heavenly Saber Pavilion's outer sect. Every year, the Heavenly Saber Pavilion's inner sect would use a month to recruit talented disciples. If they missed this window, they would not have an opportunity to enter the Heavenly Saber Pavilion's inner sect. They could only enter the outer sect and wait for the exam. There would be one such chance every 6 months. Even though it was only the outer sect, not just anyone could enter. If one had not become a martial master before the age of 15, they would not be given a chance to take the exam. The threshold of the outer sect was already so high, one could only imagine how much stricter the entry requirement to the inner sect would be. Even so, there would be throngs of saber users coming to this place. This was already considered the holy land for saber users. If one did not go to Saber City and try out the famous Heavenly Saber Morning Soul formation or live in seclusion there, then as a saber user, they would be filled with regret. After Xiao Chen had been parted from Leng Liasu for half a month, he finally arrived at the famous Saber City. Because he had suffered from plenty of injustice along the way, he had been delayed. Saber City was already within his vision. Along the way, there were many cultivators carrying large sabers. Some of the cultivators even carried several sabers. Xiao Chen even got to see several Earth-ranked spirit weapons. Before he entered Saber City, he could already feel the atmosphere, the love saber users had for their sabers. In this place, if you did not hold a saber, you would be too embarrassed to walk the road. Because Xiao Chen walked empty-handed, he was despised. Everyone gave him strange looks, there were even some who felt he was disrespecting Saber City. Killing intent appeared in the gazes of those people. Xiao Chen felt extremely depressed. For the sake of convenience of battle, Xiao Chen never made a scabbard for the Lunar Shadow Saber. If he had to take the Lunar Shadow Saber out now, it would be too inconvenient. Finally, Xiao Chen could no longer stand the gazes everyone gave him. He was preparing to make a scabbard for his Lunar Shadow Saber. If this was the level of disdain he experienced before entering the city, he was afraid he would be challenged to duels the moment he entered. Before entering Saber City, countless weapon stores filled both sides of the huge road. There were several large sabers placed in front of these shops. Xiao Chen asked around and found if one could pick them up with just their strength, they would be able to obtain the saber for free. After Xiao Chen heard that, he smiled. This is interesting. How many sabers would I be able to obtain by relying on my body's strength? However, Xiao Chen currently did not have the time nor the interest to do so. He casually walked into a weapon shop and looked around. The shop was filled with sabers, no other weapons. There were all sorts of sabers: cavalry saber, broad saber, short sabers, long sabers, and all sorts of other types of sabers Xiao Chen could not name. It was an eye-opener for him. What was surprising was all these sabers had some moonstone in them. They were all spirit weapons, some of them were even profound ranked. This was very shocking. An ordinary shop in Saber City actually sold so many spirit weapons. Spirit weapons, here, were like common commodities. There were not many people in the shop. Business was clearly not very good. Xiao Chen looked around for a while and came up with a business idea. There were so many spirit weapons here, if he casually purchased some and sold them later, he would earn a large sum. Xiao Chen looked at the owner and asked, "How much are the sabers here?" The shop owner was an old man in his 70s. His slim face was covered in wrinkles, but he did not look like he was declining, he looked very alert. The old man sized up Xiao Chen and smiled warmly. "Distinguished guest, you have not become an outer disciple yet, right? In that case, you do not have the rights to purchase the sabers." Xiao Chen was stunned. He did not expect there to be such a rule. He felt like the old man had seen though his plan and smiled awkwardly. "In that case, I wonder if you can make me a scabbard." The old man smiled. "This I can do. Take out your saber and show it to me." This old man's attitude was very gentle. It caused one to feel relaxed with hearing it. Xiao Chen did not hesitate, and he took out the lunar shadow saber and handed it over. The old man held the lunar shadow saber in his hand, gently caressing it. The expression on his face did not change as he smiled lightly. "This is a good saber. I have not seen such a design for a long time. The arc of the blade is somewhere between that of a great saber and a medium-sized saber. Its streamlined shape is close to perfect. There is a balance between the strength and aesthetics of the saber. It is about 2 meters long. This is a piece of work that could not be made without a certain level of skill. This should be the work of a famous blacksmith. It seems reminiscent of the clear sky sect style." Xiao Chen was surprised. He did not expect this old man to be able to discern so much information by looking at the saber. However, the clear sky sect was already a taboo topic. If this old man wanted to dig deeper, Xiao Chen could be in trouble. Senior must be joking. The clear sky sect has already been destroyed for a long time. How could my saber be made in the style of the clear sky sect? Xiao Chen tried to deny the matter. The old man handed the lunar shadow saber back to Xiao Chen and smiled faintly. "Young man, don't be so eager to deny things. I have not verified anything yet. You must learn to hold yourself back. Only by doing so will you be able to hide better. When you rush to deny things, you only end up exposing yourself. Although the clear sky sect has already been destroyed, many of their weapons have been passed on. You don't have to worry about this. This old man does not care about these matters." Xiao Chen was stunned as he received the lunar shadow saber. He looked at the old man's genial face and felt a certain fear. The old man seemed unfathomable. Xiao Chen smiled in an embarrassed manner, saying, "Many thanks for senior's lesson. How long would it take to complete the scabbard? I'm just an old man. I just happen to live longer. I am not worthy of giving out any lessons. As for your saber, I already have a ready-made scabbard." After the old man spoke, he took out a dusty scabbard from the cupboard before gently wiping it. The old man had an extremely grave expression on his face. It was obvious it was not just an ordinary scabbard but also an object of sentimental value to him. After a while, he presented an ancient scabbard to Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen received the scabbard and gave it a try. The lunar shadow saber fit perfectly. The instant the lunar shadow saber was placed in the scabbard, it lost all its aura. If Xiao Chen was not holding it in his hand, he would not be able to feel its existence. The old man revealed a smile on his face while Xiao Chen's revealed shock. This was so coincidental. This scabbard seemed like it was made exactly to the lunar shadow saber's specifications. It was exact, down to the millimeter. There was no misfit at all. It was like it had been sitting there quietly for countless years, waiting for the lunar shadow saber to show up. Xiao Chen recovered from his shock. Although he felt it was strange, he was very satisfied with this scabbard. He asked, "How much is this scabbard?" 10 inferior grade spirit stones. Xiao Chen was stunned for a while before he laughed. "Senior, you must have said the wrong amount, or I have heard the wrong amount. 10 inferior grade spirit stones is sufficient to purchase a superior grade profound ranked spirit weapon. How can a scabbard be so expensive? Do you feel it is not worth it? Young man, this price is really not high. Feel it carefully. Do you notice anything different?" The old man's expression did not change at all. He only smiled and spoke indifferently. "This fellow is truly devilish. It seems like he is determined to make this deal." Xiao Chen thought hatefully to himself. Although 10 inferior grade spirit stones was not much to him, he could not just casually take them out for use. Xiao Chen only managed to obtain 20 inferior grade spirit stones from Yan Qianyan. Finally, Xiao Chen reluctantly handed over 10 inferior grade spirit stones. He liked this scabbard a lot and did not want to miss out on it. "Young man, now that you've sheathed the saber, don't casually pull it out. If anyone in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion knows about the inheritance of the Thunder Emperor, you will die a tragic death." When Xiao Chen, who had already walked to the door, heard this, he suddenly stopped. His back was filled with cold sweat as he slowly turned around. There was a trace of killing intent in his eyes as he stared at the old man, who was still smiling. He grasped the handle of his saber as prepared to make a move. "Old man, you seem to know too much." Xiao Chen watched the old man with rapt attention. He was filled with shock. The Thunder Emperor's inheritance was one of his biggest secrets. This secret was even more important than the Azure Dragon martial spirit. The Thunder Emperor had many enemies while he was alive. He went missing in his later years, and finally, he died a strange death. There was a maze of doubts regarding him. This old man had only taken a look at the lunar shadow saber, and he discovered its identity. How shocking. If the secret of him possessing the Thunder Emperor's inheritance were revealed, given his insufficient strength and backing, this would not just be the extent of not having a place in the great Qin nation. This would be to the extent of the entire world. The experts of the senior generation would not be able to resist the temptation to make a move. In front of Xiao Chen's unconcealed killing intent, the old man's expression did not change at all. He smiled faintly. "My young friend, it seemed like you were a little disrespectfully to your elders. This is not good." Dang. Right after the old man spoke, the shop's door suddenly closed. The instant the door closed, the shop became dark. Xiao Chen observed his surroundings and was shocked to discover all the shelves around him seemed to have disappeared. All he could see was a boundless darkness. He could not see the end of it. Ka-ca. Xiao Chen drew the Luna Shadow Saber from its scabbard. A cold light gleamed on its blade as he executed drawing the saber. Xiao Chen leapt into the air. He decided to make the first move and attack the old man. That old man still stood there without changing his expression. However, Xiao Chen felt as if the distance between them was 90,000 kilometers, 180,000 li, away. His body hung in midair as he maintained the same stance as when he drew his saber. It seemed like he had moved a great distance, but his distance to the old man had not changed at all. He was clearly in front of him. However, it seemed like he was further away than the horizon, a distance he would never be able to reach. A small realm actually appeared here. Furthermore, this small realm could be controlled. Xiao Chen looked at the old man's calm face. Could this old man be a sage? Go out and calm yourself down. Learn to respect your elders in future. The old man waved his hand, and an irresistible force came flying out. Xiao Chen was pushed back at an extreme speed. The sound of wind howled in his ears. Bang! Xiao Chen seemed like he'd passed through several dimensional planes, and landed on the ground with a bang. He looked up to discover he was lying in the big street. The people who passed by looked at him in a strange manner. He was being looked upon as a fool. Xiao Chen quickly got up and checked his body. He discovered he was not injured at all. It was clear this old man showed mercy. Creating a small realm and controlling the laws of space, this was something only sages could do. Was that man really a sage? Xiao Chen felt this was impossible. The feeling this man gave him was only slightly stronger than Ying Yu. He was at best a martial monarch, he was definitely not a martial sage. Extending his spiritual sense, Xiao Chen closed his eyes and controlled it to enter the old man's shop. A strong aura appeared in his mind. After a while, Xiao Chen discovered the origin of the strong aura. There was a rectangular box in the shop. When his spiritual sense tried to enter the box, he found a formless barrier blocking his spiritual sense. Xiao Chen was not resigned and tried several times, each time failing. Finally, he focused his spiritual sense on the old man. He then frowned. He discovered a shocking scene. Withdrawing his spiritual sense, Xiao Chen muttered to himself, "This man has no martial spirit in his body." However, his aura clearly says he is an expert of the martial king realm. If so, then there can only be one explanation. He was once an expert, but his martial spirit had been destroyed by someone, crippling him. Even so, Xiao Chen still felt fear towards the old man. If it was not a complete holy weapon in the wooden box, then it was a king-grade secret treasure. Within the shop, the old man would be unrivaled. Xiao Chen shook his head. Since the old man did not express any malicious intent, there was no need for him to waste time on this. He turned around to leave this place. Xiao Chen was still unable to stay calm. There were so many of such shops in Saber City, did they all have experts hidden in them? Carrying such a thought, Xiao Chen unknowingly walked into another shop. The owner of this shop was a middle-aged man. Xiao Chen stared at him, trying to figure out if there was anything different about him. "Little brother, is there anything you want to buy?" That middle-aged man asked in a quivering voice. He felt goosebumps when Xiao Chen stared at him. When he heard this, Xiao Chen recovered his wits. He felt it was unfortunate. This person was just an ordinary shopkeeper, and there was nothing special about him. However, he did not know how to answer the owner's question. After all, he already knew that they did not sell spirit weapons to outsiders here. Xiao Chen thought for a while and decided to ask about Leng Tianyu. After all, by attempting to assassinate Leng Liasu, he had committed a huge offense. He first tested the ground by just asking around, did anything major happen in Saber City recently? The middle-aged man looked deeply at Xiao Chen. He said, "Well, there are major matters happening in Saber City every day. There is nothing strange about that. However, there was a very shocking event just a few days ago." After the owner said that, he stopped. Xiao Chen understood and handed him a banknote. The owner took it and gave it a casual glance. He discovered it was a banknote for 10,000 silver taels. He could not help but feel joyful. He was smiling widely as he said, "A few days ago, the eldest son of Lingyun Mountain Ranges Tianyu Peak's peak master, Leng Tianyu, returned from his journey. He immediately barged into the Heavenly Saber Morning Soul formation." It was indeed about Leng Tianyu. Xiao Chen could not help his curiosity, and he asked, "What is he doing at Heavenly Saber Morning Soul formation?" The owner chuckled. He said, "What is he doing? Of course, he was drawing the saber. The Heavenly Saber Pavilion has a legend that has been passed down for thousands of years. As long as one can make it into the center of the Heavenly Saber Morning Soul formation and pull out the sub-divine weapon there, one will be able to become the Heavenly Saber Pavilion's Pavilion Master." Did he manage to pull it out? Xiao Chen asked, interested. He did not expect the Heavenly Saber Pavilion to have such a legend. It was a surprise to Xiao Chen. If a Misty Sword sect disciple managed to draw the saber, would he become the Heavenly Saber Pavilion's Pavilion Master? Just the idea of it was interesting. The middle-aged man sighed. That is a sub-divine weapon, a weapon only inferior to divine weapons. It can split mountains and shake the heavens. Even a sage would have to avoid its blade. How could it be so easy to draw? Furthermore, the Heavenly Saber Morning Soul formation consists of 81 smaller formations interconnected to each other, forming a large formation. It has existed since the ancient era. In order to get to the center, one can't rely only on their cultivation realm, but also their comprehension of saber techniques. How would he be able to make it all the way in as a martial Grand Master? He was trapped in the 7th small formation. In the end, his father had to rescue him. This matter now completely caught Xiao Chen's attention. He quickly asked, what happened later? As for the events that happened after, the owner was not sure about those either. He said, as for the rest, there are only things that I have heard from others. It seems like Leng Tianyu committed some offense, and his father wanted to put him in detention. In the end, he crippled his own cultivation and took the initiative to enter the Heavenly Saber Pavilion's Saber prison. Hearing this news, Xiao Chen breathed out in relief. Although he did not know why Leng Tianyu locked himself in Saber prison, it was good enough not having to see him here. Holding the lunar shader Saber, Xiao Chen headed for Saber City. Soon, he arrived at the city gates and paid the entry fee. The method of paying the entry fee surprised Xiao Chen. The amount to be paid was determined by the weight of the saber the cultivator carried. Regardless of how many sabers you had or their rank and grade, however heavy they were, you paid that amount. The saber weighs 85 jin and the scabbard weighs 70 jin. Altogether, they weigh 155 jin. Little brother, you have to pay 1155 silver taels to enter the city. The two guards at the gates retrieved Xiao Chen's lunar shadow saber from the scale and smiled at Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen sweated in his heart. This was not just expensive on an ordinary level. He saw someone carrying 7 large sabers who was even more depressed. He was charged 10,000 silver taels. However, he still had to pay the money he needed to. Xiao Chen had no other ways around it. After paying up, the guard asked Xiao Chen a few questions. After they recorded his birthplace, name, and age, they handed him a form and said, go to the side to make an identity token. In the future, you can use the identity token to enter Saber City. There would be no need to pay the entry fee again. Xiao Chen smiled lightly and said, good thing the fee is not charged every time. Otherwise, no matter how much I have, I would run out. Making the identity token was simpler. After handing over the form and waiting for half an hour, he was handed a wooden token. It had Xiao Chen's informed carved on it. On the other side, there was a mountain peak and a saber carved on it. Tying the wooden token at his waist, Xiao Chen finally entered the famous Saber City. Cultivators carrying sabers filled the big streets. There was an arena located every few hundred meters. Every arena was packed with people. It was very bustling. It really showed the spirit of competition to the extreme. Aside from everyone being saber users in the arenas, Saber City was no different from the other cities. Xiao Chen asked around for the city lord's residence. When he got the information, he headed there immediately. Heavenly Saber Pavilion appointed the city lord of Saber City. He was the person managing the entire outer sect of Heavenly Saber Pavilion. The city lord's position in the sect was no lower than the peak masters. He even had a place amongst the elders. When Xiao Chen reached the gates of the city lord's residence, he handed the recommendation letter Feng Feishui gave him to the guards. The red recommendation letter had the Feng clan's seal and emblem on it. Feng Feishui had even signed it personally. The guards had really good insight. They were able to quickly recognize the authenticity of the recommendation letter. They asked Xiao Chen to wait for a moment while one went to report the matter. No long after, that person quickly ran over. He was smiling in an apologetic manner. Brother, the city lord is currently meeting with an important guest. You may have to wait for a while. Please follow me to the secondary hall to take a rest. The city lord Residence's guard was amicable. Xiao Chen did not think he was someone important anyway. He smiled faintly and followed the guard into the city lord residence with a relaxed expression. After they went past a few courtyards and gardens, he brought Xiao Chen to the secondary hall. The guard took his leave and left Xiao Chen alone. Xiao Chen ended up waiting for a long time. In the reception hall of the city lord's residence, the Saber city lord Zhe Yunbin was seated on a wooden chair. There was an old man separated from him by a tea table. He seemed displeased when he saw Xiao Chen's recommendation letter. Standing behind the two of them was a 16 or 17-year-old youth. He had a saber behind his back. He had an unsightly look on his face, and there was a glint of evil intention in his eyes. The old man placed the recommendation letter on the table and said to Zhe Yunbin in a sullen voice, Old Zhe, didn't we settle this matter a week ago already? Why are you suddenly changing your mind? Zhe Yunbin smiled faintly, Old Zhong, please don't make things difficult for me. Don't you see who wrote the recommendation letter? Miss Feng even signed it personally. I don't have much of a choice. Heavenly Saber Pavilion has been cooperating with the Feng clan for hundreds of years. They provided all the materials for all the spirit weapons and battle armor. The most important thing is their management of the spirit stones produced by Heavenly Saber Pavilion. The Feng clan has the rights to recommend someone. This was not something that was said by me, it was said by the pavilion master previously. Furthermore, I also happen to owe Miss Feng a favor. This is a good opportunity for me to repay her. When old Zhong heard this, he took out a bottle and opened its cap. A dense medicinal fragrance wafted out. It was pleasing to smell, lifting one's spirits up. Zhe Yunbin's complexion changed. He asked, "Old Zhong, is this the Immortal Cloud Life Extending Pill?" Old Zhong revealed a proud expression as he said indifferently, "That's right. The rank 7 Immortal Cloud Life Extending Pill. After consuming it, one can extend their life by 20 years. I was originally planning to give it to you after this matter was over." Zhe Yunbin laughed bitterly. "Old Zhong, why go to all this effort? With your grandson's talent, as long as he stays in the outer sect for 6 months, he will have the opportunity to enter the inner sect. Furthermore, I will definitely take care of him. He would not lack in spirit stones, medicinal pills, or martial techniques." Old Zhong looked at the youth beside him and said, "Er's talent speaks for itself, but 6 months is too long. He has already been delayed 16 years. I do not wish for him to be delayed any further." Zhe Yunbin got up and paced around the reception hall. His expressions showed a clear struggle. After a while, he finally made his decision. "I will think of a way. I will give that person a test first. He is incapable of passing it, then I will arrange for him to be placed in the outer sect first. The spot for Tianyu Peak will be left for your grandson. Wait here first." After Zhe Yunbin spoke, he headed to the secondary hall. After Zhe Yunbin left, old Zhong immediately got up and went to the door. He called an old man over and told him what happened. Finally, he instructed him, "I do not wish for there to be any accidents. Whether Zhong Yi can enter the Heavenly Saber Pavilion inner sect will affect the Zhong clan standing in Yunyang City for hundreds of years. When that person comes out, keep an eye on him. If he is unable to pass the test, then good. However, if he passes, you know what to do." This old man's cultivation was that medial grade martial saint. After he heard this, he replied indifferently, "Clan head, do not worry. Nothing will go wrong with such a small matter." In the secondary hall, just as Xiao Chen's patience was wearing thin, there was the sound of footsteps. The door of the secondary hall opened, and a 70-odd-year-old man came. He walked with big strides, obviously still very vigorous. Xiao Chen checked him with his spiritual sense. He was unable to tell how strong he was. His spiritual sense felt like it sank into a vast ocean, giving him an unfathomable feeling. He could not help but feel astonished. When Zhe Yunbin saw Xiao Chen, he smiled faintly. "My apologies, I was delayed by some matters and caused this little friend to wait. Please do not take offense at that." While Zhe Yunbin was speaking, he was also sizing up Xiao Chen. As he swept gaze across Xiao Chen felt as though he was completely seen through, and there were no secrets he could keep from him. However, Xiao Chen did not panic. He had just met a sub-sage earlier. Compared to that, this was nothing. Xiao Chen got up, cupped his hands and greeted him respectfully. "Greetings, senior. As a younger generation, it is right for me to be waiting." Zhe Yunbin nodded to himself in approval. Although he was only a superior grade martial master, he was able to keep himself composed under his aura. He was polite and understood etiquette, that was hard to come by. Zhe Yunbin gestured for Xiao Chen to take a sit. He smiled, "I am Zhe Yunbin. If you don't mind, you may call me Old Zhe. I have not asked this little friend for your name yet." Yi Chen, the Yi that means leaf, and the Chen from the 8 characters of the horoscope. Yi Chen was his current alias. The name Xiao Chen had been spread throughout the Zaihe province by the Yan clan. It was not a good idea to use his real name. TL note. Yi means leaf. The 8 characters of the horoscope in Chinese are Sheng Xian Ba Zi, Sheng Chen Ba Zi. The Xian Chen is the second character. Do note, the Xian Chen in Xiao Chen is different, this one means morning. After Zhe Yunbin exchanged a few more polite words, He said, Yi Chen, I have seen Miss Feng's recommendation letter. In her letter, she strongly recommended you. I respect Miss Feng a lot and have to take her words into account. However, the Heavenly Saber Pavilion inner sect is the core of Heavenly Saber Pavilion's strength. There cannot be any weak link in it. I will still have to test your strength. Xiao Chen thought very quickly, then he said, Old Jay, just tell me directly. I, Yi Chen, am not an unreasonable person. When Jay Yunbin heard this, he was stunned. He then smiled. It has been a very long time since someone from the younger generation dared to speak to me like this. In that case, I will be direct. I have a task for you. If you can complete it, I will give you a chance to enter the inner sect directly. If not, then I will send you to the outer sect first to temper yourself. What do you think? Xiao Chen did not think too much about this. He had missed the inner sect examination and had been planning to enter via the outer sect first anyway. However, now that he had Feng Feishui's letter, he had such an opportunity. Even if he failed, there was not much loss to him. Xiao Chen did not hesitate and agreed. To Jay Yunbin's surprise, Xiao Chen did not try to bargain on the terms. Jay Yunbin smiled, I admire your attitude, but I hope you will not be careless. The task I'm going to give you is the same as the end-of-year exam of the outer disciples. The shortcut I'm giving you is only helping you save 6 months. Kill any rank 5 spirit beast in Evil Wind Valley outside the city. To prevent cheating, you have to bring the body back for me to inspect. After Jay Yunbin finished, he handed some information on Evil Wind Valley to Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen received it and immediately bid the city lord goodbye without reading it. After Xiao Chen found a desolate courtyard in Saber City, he began to carefully read the information Jay Yunbin handed him. Evil Wind Valley was situated to the west of Saber City. There was abundant cold chi there. Many of the spirit beasts were of the ice attribute. It was a place where the outer disciple frequently trained. A rank 5 spirit beast was equivalent to a human martial saint. Its quick-wittedness and intelligence were lower than humans, but its pure strength was definitely higher. Xiao Chen looked through it, then threw it onto the table. There was very little information on it. It was almost no help at all.